My whole body trembled, and my legs gave way. Just an hour earlier, I had cried with happiness because I had just been informed that I had inherited about £8 million from my father. I ran with my little boy in my arms to my husband's office to surprise him. But from the other side of his office door, I was the one who received the surprise. Before the story begins, I invite you to write in the comments from which country you are listening. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe so that this channel can continue to grow and we can share more exciting stories. My world was small but full. Small because it was reduced to our rented, simple house on the outskirts of London, and full because it was flooded by the laughter of our son, Rafi, that morning. Like hundreds of mornings before, I, Nadia, fed him his plate of porridge with shredded chicken. The simple dress I was wearing was a little crooked because Rafi had just pulled on it while laughing heartily. That 5-year-old boy was the center of my universe. He was the reason behind every tiredness and the source of every joy. My husband, David, had left for work before dawn. He always said he was very busy, working hard for us. I always believed him. I loved him with what was left of a heart that was already tired by life before I met him. We lived hand to mouth. David was a junior manager at a real estate company. His salary was just enough to pay the rent, bills, and food. There was almost never anything left to save. I didn't complain. For me, having a loving David and a healthy Rafi was more than I would have dared to ask for. My parents had died long ago. They had left me completely alone until David came into my life and gave me something akin to a new family. While I was washing the breakfast dishes, my phone, with its screen already cracked in several corners, began to ring. It was an unknown number. My heart beat a little faster. Rarely did anyone call me who wasn't David or the ladies from the Sunday Quran study group. I dried my hands on my apron and answered. "Hello, Mrs. Nadia?" asked a deep, professional, and completely unfamiliar voice. "Yes, this is she," I replied. "Who am I speaking with?" "Good morning, Mrs. Nadia. My name is Robert. I am a solicitor from Robert and Associates. I am the executor of your late father's will." For an instant, I felt my heart stop. Father, it had been a long time since I had heard that name spoken so formally. "My father," I repeated with a trembling voice. "What about my father?" "Mrs. Nadia, I ask you to calm down. I know this is sudden. The deceased left something for you, something that only now we can process and release. After completing a series of rather complex legal procedures, your father left a long-term investment fund in your name." Mr. Robert paused as if giving me time to breathe. "A fund? What fund?" "As far as I know, my father had nothing when he passed away." My mind traveled to that simple burial years ago. Only I and a few neighbors accompanied the body. Nothing to suggest a hidden fortune. That's what everyone believed, madam, the solicitor continued. But your father was very cunning. He diverted most of his assets into protected, very discreet investments that could only be claimed by you, his only heir, after a certain period of time had passed. And that period has just expired. I still didn't understand anything. "I don't understand, solicitor. What are you trying to tell me?" I heard his patient sigh on the other end. "In short, Mrs. Nadia, you are the legitimate heir to your father's investment fund. After deducting all taxes and administrative expenses, the net amount that will be deposited into your account is about £8 million. The plate I was holding slipped from my hand, fell to the ceramic floor, and shattered into pieces. £8 million. I couldn't have heard correctly. My ears buzzed, my legs turned to rags. I let myself fall onto the cold kitchen floor among the pieces of crockery. "Solicitor, you're joking, aren't you?" I whispered. Tears welled up in my eyes. "I'm not joking, Mrs. Nadia. I am very serious. I have been trying to find you for months. Your residential data has changed several times. I finally located this number. We need to arrange a meeting for you to sign the fund release documents. Are you feeling well?" I couldn't articulate a word. The tears were now falling uncontrollably. This was not a dream. It was real. "Mama, what's wrong?" I heard Rafi's worried little voice. He ran into the kitchen and saw me crying, sitting on the floor. I hastened to wipe away my tears and smiled as best I could. "Nothing is wrong, my love. Mama is fine. Mama is very happy. That's all." After hanging up with Robert, with the promise to meet soon in his office, I stayed on the floor for a long time. My mind repeated again and again. 8 million pounds. It was a figure I had never even dared to imagine. In my wildest dreams, I could buy a house. A real house, not a cheap rented dwelling. A house with a garden for Raffi to play in. I could give him the best education. I could help David. Yes, David, my husband. His face appeared in my mind, his tired face when he returned from work, his complaints about his boss, his dream of one day owning his own business, always hampered by lack of capital. Now all that could come true. We could fulfill all our dreams. David would no longer have to kill himself working for others. A wave of enthusiasm swept through my body. I had to tell him immediately. I couldn't wait for him to come back at night. I had to see his face when he heard the news. I wanted to share this happiness with him right now. My hands were still trembling a little when I picked up the pieces of the plate. Then I bathed Raffi and put on his best clothes, a sky blue polo shirt that fit him perfectly. I quickly changed myself. I put on my prettiest tunic, the one I usually wore for Eid al-Fitr, and put on some perfume. I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was flushed with emotion. "Where are we going, Mama?" Raffi asked, confused to see me in such a hurry. I knelt down and took his little shoulders in my hands. "We are going to give Daddy a huge surprise, darling. After today, our life is going to change," I told him with a voice still hoarse from emotional crying. I ordered a taxi through an app. While I waited, my heart pounded in my chest. I imagined David's reaction. He would be surprised. He would hug me tightly, perhaps cry with joy. Together, we would plan our future, a bright future, a future we had never dared to imagine. When the taxi arrived, I got in with Raffi in my arms, brimming with excitement. Inside the car, I couldn't stop smiling. I kissed my son's cheeks again and again. "Mama loves you, Raffi. Mama loves Daddy. We are going to be the happiest family in the world." The journey to David's office was the longest of my life. It usually took about 30 minutes, but that day every second felt eternal. I held Raffi hugged on my lap. The sky seemed bluer, and the sun brighter. Or maybe it was just my perception, that of a woman who had just found out that her destiny had completely changed. I imagined David, perhaps hunched over his computer, frowning, dealing with numbers and difficult clients. Very soon, that weight would be lifted from his shoulders. This time, it would be me who lifted it. The taxi stopped in front of a tall, modern office building with large windows reflecting the sky. That was David's world, a world that felt a little alien to me. I almost never came here. He always said it wasn't necessary, that he was very busy, and that the office was not a place for children, but today was the exception. I paid the taxi and took Raffi's hand. We entered the cold and elegant lobby. The polished marble floor reflected our silhouettes. An impeccably dressed receptionist, with perfect makeup, looked up at us. I felt her gaze sweep over my simple dress, my party tunic, and then stop at Raffi, who was watching everything with wide eyes. I thought I perceived a slight flash of disdain in her eyes, or perhaps I was just sensitive. "Good afternoon. How can I help you?" she asked with a polite but distant tone. "Good afternoon," I replied with a smile. "I'm here to see Mr. David, my husband." The receptionist typed something on her computer. "Did you have an appointment with him?" she asked. "No, I'm his wife," I repeated. "I want to surprise him." I winked at her about the surprise part. She raised an eyebrow. "He's in his office. 15th floor. The elevators are over there," she indicated with little interest. I thanked her and walked with Raffi towards the elevators. Inside the metal box that took us upwards, my heart beat faster and faster. Raffi began to get impatient. "Daddy is taking a long time," he complained. "We're almost there, my love. Just a little longer," I said, stroking his hair. The doors opened on the 15th floor. The hallway was carpeted, silent, and muffled the sound of our footsteps. I knew David's office was at the end. I had only been there once, on a family visit organized by the company the previous year. I walked slowly, holding Raffi, who wanted to run. As I got closer, I began to hear voices coming from inside the office, whose wooden door had a frosted glass panel. It was slightly ajar, leaving a small crack through which the voices escaped. I heard David's laughter, a deep and resonant laugh, but there was something strange about it. It sounded different, cold, full of a kind of triumph. "I told you, sir. The plan is working perfectly," David said, amused. I stopped dead in my tracks. "Sir, as far as I knew, David's father was dead, just like mine. Perhaps he was talking to his boss." I moved my ear a little closer to the door and motioned for Raffi to be quiet. Another, more mature and authoritative voice replied, "Very good." So the solicitor finally called her. "Exactly," David celebrated. "That naive solicitor finally called Nadia this morning, just as you predicted. She must be on her way to the bank right now, or perhaps crying foolishly with happiness at home." I felt my heart shrink. Nadia was talking about me, naive solicitor. He was referring to Robert, £8 million. The figure resonated in my head. "You've done a good job, David, marrying her pretending you were poor. An impeccable performance." The older voice scoffed, followed by a giggle. I covered my mouth with my hand. Nausea rose in my throat. My whole body began to tremble. "Of course, Mr. Marcus," David replied, finally naming him. "All thanks to your guidance. I've been tracking that money for years, waiting for the fund to mature. Nadia knows nothing. She's too naive, too in love." He laughed again. It was the same laugh I had heard the day he proposed to me, the same one he let out when Raffi was born. Now, however, it sounded like the laugh of a demon. "And what's your plan after she signs over the money?" Marcus asked. There was a silence, and then David's voice dropped several notes, becoming hard and cruel. A voice I had never heard before. "Of course, I'll keep everything. I'll transfer the money to our offshore account. After that, Nadia and the child won't see a penny. Why? They're just a burden. I'm going to leave her. I'll throw them out of the house so they'll be beggars again." The world stopped. "The child. My child. That child means nothing to me," David continued. "Well, biologically he is mine, but I never wanted him. He was just a tool to keep Nadia tied to me." My body froze. An uncontrollable tremor ran through me from head to toe. My knees buckled. If I hadn't been leaning against the wall, I would have fallen to the floor. Raffi, noticing my tremor, looked at me scared. "Mama, I'm cold," he mumbled. I couldn't answer him. I couldn't even breathe. The voices in the office continued talking, but I no longer heard them clearly. I only heard the deafening beats of my own heart and David's words repeating in my head. "I'll throw them out on the street. They're a burden. Beggars." The world I had built on love and trust shattered in a matter of seconds. The man I loved, my son's father, the man I had dreamed of sharing old age with. He was a monster. He knew about the inheritance. He had planned everything. Our marriage was part of a plan. I was nothing more than a piece in his game. The pain that pierced my chest was sharper than the one I felt when I lost my parents. It was the pain of betrayal, of being betrayed by the only person I trusted in this world. I don't know how long I stood there petrified, but I knew I couldn't faint. Not there, not now. With what little strength I had left, I backed away step by step without making a sound. Raffi looked at me confused, but fortunately he remained silent, perhaps sensing the horror that enveloped me. I turned around, picked Raffi up, and walked quickly to the elevator. I didn't run. I walked with what little dignity I had left while collapsing inside. Back in the lobby, I'm sure the receptionist must have seen my pale face, but I didn't care. I left the building, and the chaotic warmth of London's streets enveloped me, but I felt icy cold, so cold that my bones ached. I ordered another taxi to go home. On the way, I didn't cry. I stared out the window, lost. Raffi fell asleep on my lap, unaware that his small world had just exploded. Surprise. Yes, I wanted to surprise David. In the end, I was the one surprised. When the taxi stopped in front of our rented house, I still wasn't crying. Something had replaced the pain, something cold, hard, sharp. It was rage. And behind that rage, a determination that was beginning to take shape. Of course, I was going to surprise him. I would pretend I hadn't heard anything. I would play my part just as he had played his all this time. He had made a plan for me. I was going to make a much bigger one for him. I was going to get him back. I would do something that would make him regret it for the rest of his life. He wanted to take away my world. I would take away his. I closed the house door carefully. The click of the lock resonated in my ears. Raffi slept on my shoulder. His quiet breathing was the only warmth left. I carried him to our small room, laid him on the thin mattress, and covered him. I kissed his forehead and stayed for a while, looking at his innocent face. He was the only piece of my world that remained intact. He was the only reason I hadn't collapsed in the office lobby. Raffi was innocent. And the man I had just heard, the man capable of calling his own son a tool and a burden, did not deserve to be called a father. I left the room and closed the door slowly. The house, which until that morning had been my small castle, now felt like a prison. Every corner reminded me of a lie. I saw our wedding photo on the wall. David smiled with apparent sincerity, hugging me tightly. I remembered how that day I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. I turned out to be the most naive. I went into the bathroom and looked at myself in the old mirror with rusted edges. My face was pale, my eyes swollen but dry. There were no more tears. In my eyes, there was something new and icy. The woman looking back at me was no longer the Nadia I knew. She was a destroyed woman. And on the rubble, something new was rising. Anger was its foundation. I washed my face with cold water. I felt the water wake me up. I adjusted my headscarf carefully. I had to appear normal. I couldn't show myself broken. From that moment on, I had to become an actress, the best actress in the world, because if I failed, Raffi and I would end up on the street, exactly as David had planned. I looked at the clock. It was a few hours before he would return. I had to prepare dinner. The routine shouldn't change. I went to the kitchen. It was the same place where I had received Robert's call that morning, although it seemed like 1,000 years had passed. I took vegetables and chicken from the refrigerator and started chopping onions. My hands moved mechanically. The knife slid with precision. I imagined David's face. Every slice was a piece of my rage, every chop an insult I didn't let out. He thought I was foolish, that I was weak, that I was just a naive housewife, incapable of anything more than cooking and caring for a child. He was wrong. He had underestimated the strength of a mother when her child is threatened. I prepared his favorite dish, chicken in soy sauce with a spicy touch. The aroma filled the house. Normally, that smell made me feel at home. That night, it turned my stomach, but I kept cooking. I was going to serve him the best poison, my smile. Time passed in a thick silence. Raffi was still asleep. I sat at the table to wait, waiting for my executioner, waiting for the man I loved and hated at the same time. At 10 o'clock, I heard the sound of his motorbike. My heart jumped in my chest. I took a deep breath. Calm, Nadia, for Raffi, I repeated to myself. The door opened. Assalamu alaikum, he greeted with that voice that I now knew what it was capable of. Walaikum assalam, my love, I replied, forcing a smile. It's strange that you're so late. I approached and took his briefcase, as always. He kissed my forehead. The kiss felt icy. Sorry, my love. There was a last-minute meeting with the big boss. Exhausting, he complained. The big boss, Mr. Marcus, my poor husband. I feigned empathy. Go on, I've already prepared dinner. Take a quick shower and come to the table. My wife really understands me, he said, messing up my hijab familiarly before going to the bathroom. While he was showering, I set the table. My hands barely trembled as I placed his plate. I had to control myself. David came out of the bathroom fresh, in clean clothes, and sat down. Wow, chicken and sauce. Just what I fancied, he said, smiling. His smile was fake, just like mine. We started to eat. Only the clinking of cutlery against plates could be heard. I could barely swallow. Everything tasted like stone, but I forced myself. What's wrong, my love? Why so quiet? He asked, looking at me. It was time. I looked up. Before, David's eyes gave me security. This time, it would be the stage for my performance. David, I started, letting my voice tremble. I let a few tears well up. He immediately tensed. What's wrong, Nadia? Are you feeling ill? I shook my head and then smiled as if overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. It's huge news, I said brokenly. "What news?" he asked, feigning surprise. "A brilliant actor. This morning," I paused, breathing as if very excited, "a solicitor called me, my late father's solicitor." David put down his spoon, leaned towards me. His eyes immediately sparkled, although he tried to hide it. A solicitor. What did he want? I let a tear fall. "It turns out that Dad left me an inheritance that can only now be made effective." "An inheritance," he repeated, his eyes wide. "How much, my love? 10,000 pounds, 0 pounds?" I looked at him steadily. "About 8 million pounds. Silence enveloped us. David remained motionless. His performance was almost perfect. He put on a shocked face, his mouth slightly open, his eyes wide. He really was a good actor. "What? What did you say?" "8. How much?" he murmured. "It's no joke. It's about 8 million pounds, I replied, putting my hands to my face, feigning tears of emotion. "Our life is going to change, David. Our life." A second later, David jumped out of his chair, lunged towards me, lifted me up, and hugged me so tightly I almost ran out of air. "My God, my love, this is incredible!" he shouted. He spun me in the air. "I can't believe it. We're rich, Nadia, we're rich." I hugged him back and rested my head on his chest. I felt his heart pounding, racing, not from love, but from the adrenaline of greed. I closed my eyes, suppressing the disgust. His hug felt like the pressure of a snake, cold and deadly. "It's our blessing, my love. Rafi's blessing," he said, kissing the top of my head. "Our blessing." Yes, a blessing he had been planning for years to turn into his loot. He released me and took my shoulders. His eyes were shiny. He even looked like he was about to cry. "We can buy a big house. We won't have to live in this cramped place. And Rafi, we can send him to the best schools, even abroad," he said, painting a bright future. I nodded, feigning sobs of happiness. He led me back to the chair and sat next to me, squeezing my hand. "But money like this has to be handled carefully, Nadia. There are a lot of bad people out there. You don't know anything about investments or laws," he finally began, casting the hook. "I know, David, I'm scared," I whispered, playing my role as a fragile woman well. "Don't be afraid," he said, caressing my hand. "That's what I'm here for. I'll help you with everything. Leave it to me. You just rest. You trust me, don't you, my love?" I looked him straight in the eyes of a liar, a traitor. "Of course, my love," I replied with my sweetest smile. "I trust you completely. You're my husband. Who else could I trust but you?" He smiled, satisfied, victorious. He thought he had already won the war. He didn't know it was just beginning. That night was the longest of my life. I slept next to him, my back to him. He snored softly, sleeping like a winner who believes his plan is going perfectly. I didn't close my eyes for a second. My mind worked faster than ever. I began to devise a strategy. I thought of every move, every possibility. The first thing was to secure my position. I couldn't face two cunning men like David and Marcus alone. I needed allies, and I knew exactly who to call. At dawn, David woke up in a good mood. He whistled softly in the shower. He hugged me twice before leaving, something he hadn't done for years. "I'm going to find out what to do to handle so much money. Then I'll look for a trustworthy notary," he said before leaving. I just smiled and nodded. "Take care, my love." When the sound of the motorbike faded into the distance, my smile disappeared. I locked the door. I caressed Rafi's hair, who had just woken up, and gave him breakfast. When he was busy with his toys, I picked up the phone and dialed. "Hello, Solicitor Robert. This is Nadia. Good morning, Mrs. Nadia." "I've been expecting your call since yesterday," he replied in his calm tone. "We need to meet as soon as possible," I said in a low, urgent voice, "but not at your office. This is very important and completely confidential." There was a brief silence on the other end. "I understand," he finally replied. "How about a small coffee shop near the embankment? I'll send you the location. We'll meet in an hour." "I'll be there." I hastened to get ready. I left Rafi with the next-door neighbor, Mrs. Rose, with the excuse that I had an urgent errand at the town hall. I ordered a motorbike through an app, not a taxi. I had to move quickly and discreetly. I arrived at the coffee shop, which was quite crowded. The ideal place, No one would notice us amidst all the noise. Robert was already sitting at a corner table with a cup of black coffee in front of him. He was a middle-aged man, well-groomed, with horn-rimmed glasses that gave him a very serious air. I sat across from him, my heart pounding. "Mrs. Nadia," he greeted with a slight nod. "Solicitor," I began without preamble. "I don't know who I can trust, but something tells me I can trust you. I need to tell you something. Does it have to do with the inheritance?" he asked. "Yes, but not just that." I took a breath. "I have to tell you something I overheard yesterday, something terrible." I told him everything. My trip to David's office, the conversation I overheard behind the door, Marcus's name, the plan to keep all the money and throw Raffi and me out on the street. As I spoke, Robert's face changed from serene to surprised, and then to somber. His jaw hardened. When I finished, he remained silent for a long time, looking at his coffee. "Marcus," he murmured. "I should have suspected it. Do you know him?" I asked. Robert looked up. His eyes met mine. "Not only do I know him, Mrs. Nadia, I know exactly who he is, Mr. Marcus was your father's biggest business rival. He was, in fact, the one who caused the downfall of your father's company more than 10 years ago. We could never prove anything, but your father was convinced that Marcus had played dirty. I felt my blood run cold. This was no longer just about money. It was a revenge that had been brewing for years. David was not just a treacherous husband. He was the soldier sent by Marcus to finish the job." Robert continued, his voice filled with determination. "Your father was my friend. He asked me to protect you. He made me swear it at his grave. And now I know exactly what I must do." "What are we going to do?" I asked. "First, protect your assets. David is going to try to get you to sign a power of attorney to manage the money. Don't sign anything, ever. If he insists, tell him you want to understand the documents well, that you want to meet with me. I will play the role of the tedious, bureaucratic solicitor who delays everything. We will gain time." He leaned towards me. "While we gain time, we have to move, be smarter than them. I can temporarily freeze the release of funds for security reasons, but that would alert them. The other option is to release a small part of the money without David knowing." "What for?" I asked. "For your war chest," he replied. "You can't face them empty-handed. You need resources. You need to know what they are doing, where they have their money, what else they have been plotting." "Spy on him," I whispered. "A private investigator," Robert corrected. "I know someone I can absolutely trust. He's the best at what he does. He can follow David and Marcus, track their accounts, their properties, even find evidence of other crimes." I thought of the conversation in the office, of their laughter. The disgust returned. "Do it, solicitor," I said. This time my voice no longer trembled. "How much do we need?" "It's not cheap, but it's worth every penny. I propose that we first release about £30,000. We will put them in a new account in your name that only you and I will know about. £30,000. A figure that before would have seemed impossible to me. Now it was just the beginning." "I agree," I said. "And I don't just want to know what they intend to do. I want proof." "Proof for what?" he asked. "To divorce him and to destroy them." As they tried to destroy me, Robert observed me in silence for a few seconds, as if evaluating a new person. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, Mrs. Nadia. Then, we are going to prepare a great plan. We will give them a surprise they will never forget." I left the coffee shop with a different feeling. Fear had been replaced by a clear purpose. I was no longer the weak Nadia. I was becoming a warrior. Days later, Robert informed me that the secret account was already open and ready. He had already transferred the £30,000 that we would use as battle capital. He also organized the meeting with the private investigator named Sean. I saw him in the lobby of a simple hotel in the city center. He was an ordinary-looking man, nothing flashy, but with sharp eyes. "Mrs. Nadia?" he asked. I nodded. "I don't have much time. This is my husband." I showed him a photo of David hugging Raffi, then another of Marcus that Robert had obtained from old business reports. "I want to know everything. Where does he go? Who does he meet with? Where does he keep his money? And anything else you can find out about Marcus?" Sean nodded. "Understood. I'll send you daily reports." "Perfect. And above all, don't let them find out." I arrived home before David. I cooked again, smiled again, played my role as a naive wife again. David, for his part, became sweeter every day. He brought me flowers, chocolates, toys for Rafi. He thought he was slowly reeling in his prey. He didn't know that in front of him there was not a fish, but a shark. A week later, just as David was starting to get impatient for the signature of the power of attorney, I received Sean's first report in the secret email I had created. The report was short, a photo and a few lines. In the photo, David and Marcus shook hands in front of a luxurious construction project still under construction. Both laughed proudly. Below, Sean's comment, "Target, David, has just been promoted to project director. The project is funded by Marcus. Suspicious transfers detected from the project account to personal offshore accounts in both their names. High probability of money laundering." Money laundering. They weren't just simple fraudsters, they were criminals. The game was much bigger and dirtier than I had imagined, and we had just found our first weapon. The following weeks were an exhausting game of chess. David, on the one hand, transformed into the perfect husband. He arrived earlier, brought treats, played with Rafi, massaged my feet at night, and whispered in my ear that our future would be bright. He spoke of a house with a swimming pool, luxury cars, or trips around the world. He painted paradise when in reality he wanted to drag me to hell. Every caress felt cold to me. Every sweet word sounded like the hiss of a snake. I smiled, nodded, and pretended to be fascinated. Inside, I counted every lie. On the other hand, his anxiety was increasing. "So, my love, how are things going with the solicitor?" he would ask with apparent casualness. "The sooner we sign, the better. That way, we get that weight off our shoulders." I always had a ready answer. "Patience, David. Solicitor Robert says there are many documents. That inheritance taxes are complicated," I replied one day. "He's out of town with other clients," I'd say another. He assured me the money is safe. "We just have to wait." Every time I put off the matter, I saw a flash of irritation in his eyes before he put his mask-like smile back on. Meanwhile, Sean and Robert worked tirelessly. The investigator sent photos of meetings in expensive hotels, copies of bank statements, intercepted phone conversations. Everything indicated that the construction project was in crisis due to mismanagement and corruption. They desperately needed fresh money. They needed my inheritance. I knew I couldn't drag it out forever. David began to show less patience. "I don't like your solicitor," he complained one night. "He's too slow." Could he be trying to gain an advantage? That was my signal. I knew I had to give him something. A lure. That night, when Rafi was already asleep, I sat next to him in the living room. I put on my best worried face. "David," I began, my voice trembling. "I'm scared." He turned off the television instantly. "Scared of what, my love? Wasn't Robert taking care of everything?" I looked down and fiddled with the edge of my hijab. "I feel bad about you. You've worked so hard, you have so many plans, and because of the solicitor, I'm holding back the money. I've been talking to him. I told him I need a part of the inheritance now for you, for our plans." David's eyes lit up. "Yes, can you take out a part?" he asked with ill-concealed enthusiasm. I nodded. "He says yes, that because it's a large fund, he can release a little as an emergency fund. It's not much." "Of course." I paused dramatically. "Maybe about 60,000 pounds, I concluded as if releasing a treasure. David almost choked. 60,000 pounds! "I know. It's nothing compared to the 8 million, I said with feigned modesty. "But I thought you could use it for whatever you need, to start our projects, so you don't have to worry about money. I trust you completely. You know how to handle it." It was my riskiest gamble. I put a big hook in front of him. If he rejected it, the plan would fall apart. But I knew my husband. I knew the depth of his greed. David could not hide his euphoria. He hugged me tightly. "You are the best wife in the world, Nadia. Of course it will help me. It will speed everything up." "So, are you going to transfer it to my payroll account, the usual one?" he asked, almost breathless. "Yes, my love. I'll arrange it tomorrow," I replied, suppressing the urge to pull away. The next day, I went to the bank accompanied by an assistant from Robert's office, who posed as my cousin. The operation went smoothly. About £60,000 left the inheritance account and arrived in David's personal account. That night, David was the happiest man on the planet. He took Raffi and me to dinner at an expensive restaurant, one of those we used to only look at from the sidewalk. He ordered without looking at prices. "This is just the beginning, my love," he said, raising his glass of juice. "The beginning of our new life." I smiled and raised mine. To our new life. What he didn't know was that Robert and Sean were already on alert. David's account was monitored 24 hours a day. It didn't take long to get results. 2 days after the transfer, Sean sent an urgent report. The money had not been used for a down payment on a house or a car. None of that. David had divided the £60,000 into 3 parts and had transferred almost everything. The report was clear. The money went to fictitious supplier company accounts connected to Marcus's project, and a considerable portion, the most compromising, went directly to Marcus's personal offshore account, the same one Sean had already located. David was not investing. He was not building our future. He was using my father's inheritance to cover the holes in his dirty dealings. He was using me to finance his money laundering. I closed the laptop. My hands no longer trembled. I only felt an absolute coldness. The fish had swallowed the hook whole. It was time to tighten the line. After having swallowed that £60,000 lure, David let down his guard. He thought he was in control. He thought I was a foolish wife willing to hand over her fortune. He stopped pressuring me so much for the rest of the inheritance. He looked busy, and I knew why. Sean reported an increase in his movements. Frequent meetings with Marcus, visits to the project, luxurious meals. I gave them a week. A week to feel safe, to trust that everything was under control. During that week, I was the perfect wife. I cooked, smiled, and pleased him in every way. While my team worked behind the scenes, Robert prepared legal documents. Sean gathered more evidence. I, for my part, prepared for the final act. On the 7th day, David arrived with news. "My love, I have good news," he announced as soon as he crossed the threshold. His face was beaming. "Marcus wants to meet you." My heart pounded. "Meet me? What for?" I asked, feigning surprise. "He heard about the inheritance and is impressed by your generosity. He wants to offer us a golden opportunity, a way to double the rest of the money in a short time," he explained, placing his hands on my shoulders. "Tomorrow at 10, we have an appointment at his office. This is our big day, Nadia. After tomorrow, we will officially be millionaires. And what do I have to bring? What do I have to say?" I asked, playing the role of the nervous neighborhood wife. "You don't have to bring anything, just yourself and the inheritance documents, in case the notary wants to see them. I'll take care of everything else. You just sit next to me and smile." "Yes." I nodded docilely. "Okay, my love." That night, I barely slept. I contacted Robert and Sean. "Tomorrow at 10 at Marcus's office," I told them. "It's time." The next morning, I dressed with special care. I put on a dark blue tunic, sober but elegant. I arranged my headscarf perfectly and applied light makeup. I looked in the mirror and saw a different woman. Her eyes held no fear. They shone with determination. "Mama, you're very pretty," Raffi said, hugging my waist. I smiled and kissed him. "Pray for Mama, my love," I asked. David was already waiting for me in a new, expensive suit, with the air of a successful executive. He had no idea he was walking towards his own downfall. We arrived at Marcus's building, even more luxurious than David's office. We went up a private elevator to the top floor. Marcus's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a stunning view of the city. He was sitting behind a solid wooden desk, like a king on his throne. He was older than David, with an authoritative demeanor and cold eyes. "Ah, David, and you must be Mrs. Nadia," he said without getting up. "Please, sit down." I sat on a soft leather armchair, David next to me, tense but excited. "I hear you've been very lucky, Mrs. Nadia," Marcus began without preamble, "and your husband has been very clever. He has already invested a part with us with excellent results." He smiled maliciously. "Those £60,000 have already grown remarkably this week. Imagine what we can do with the other 8 million. David nudged me slightly. "What kind of opportunities?" I asked. "Very simple," Marcus said. You give us the rest of the money to invest in a very profitable real estate project. In 6 months, I guarantee it will have doubled. But of course, to make things easier, you will have to sign a general power of attorney in David's favor so that he can manage everything on your behalf." At that moment, a man who looked like a notary, who had been standing in a corner, approached and placed a thick stack of documents in front of us. On the first page, it clearly read, "Broad and unlimited general power of attorney. You just have to sign here, madam," the supposed notary indicated, handing me a pen. David looked at me with a broad smile, his eyes burned with ambition. "Sign it, my love. It's our dream." I took the pen. My hand was steady. I looked at David, then at Marcus, then at the notary. I put the pen down on the table. "I'm sorry," I said softly. "I can't sign this." David's smile froze. "What's wrong, my love? Is there a problem?" "I can't sign this power of attorney," I repeated, "because I believe there are other, more urgent documents that you two will have to sign very soon." David frowned. Marcus looked at me with irritation. "What are you talking about?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "That I know everything you've been doing." At that moment, the office door opened. David and Marcus turned around, surprised. Robert entered, calm with his briefcase. Behind him came Sean and 2 men in suits with metal briefcases. "Who are they? Security!" Marcus roared. "Get these people out of here!" "No need to shout, Mr. Marcus," Robert said calmly, placing his briefcase on the coffee table next to the stack of power of attorney papers. "We are here at the invitation of your director's client," he said, looking at me. "I don't care," Marcus spat. "They're intruding in my office. It's illegal. Everything your investigator recorded is a violation of my privacy. I can sue you." "Try it," Sean intervened, who until then had remained silent. All financial information was obtained through legal audits, and the voice recordings came from David's own phone, which I myself intercepted with his innocent collaboration when he accepted the new cell phone you gave him. He didn't even change the factory password. Marcus gave David a murderous look. "Idiot," he hissed. "No, he's not an idiot," I said, making both of them look at me again. "He's greedy, just like you, Mr. Marcus. And both of you thought I was an idiot." I pulled a thick folder from my bag and dropped it on the table on top of the power of attorney they wanted me to sign. "Here's everything," I said. "The transfers of the £60,000 I invested so lovingly, how in less than 24 hours the money left David's account to ghost companies related to his project, and how from there it ended up in his personal offshore account, the same account he's been laundering money with for years." The men in suits opened their briefcases and took out laptops, bank statements, charts. They began spreading documents across the table. "The trail is crystal clear, Mr. Marcus," one of the auditors said, "from Mrs. Nadia's assets to David's account, from David to 3 shell companies, from the shell companies, 80% directly to your account in the Cayman Islands. And here's your signature authorizing the transfers." Marcus staggered a step backward as if he had been punched. David, on the other hand, collapsed into the armchair, white as paper. "As I said," I continued, looking him directly in the eyes, "I'm not going to sign your power of attorney, but you two will have to sign some documents shortly. Arrest documents, seizure warrants, that sort of thing." Robert stepped forward. "Gentlemen, Marcus and David, we have enough evidence to accuse you of fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. You can cooperate or face the full weight of the law." David suddenly stood up and stumbled towards me. "Nadia, my love, you're wrong. He stammered. He tried to touch me, but I pulled my hand away. "Enough, David," I said with ice in my voice. "Your performance is over. It's not a performance. I swear I love you. I love Raffi. Everything I did was for us, for our future," he pleaded with tears in his eyes. I laughed, a dry, joyless laugh. "For us? It was also for us when you told Marcus that you would throw Raffi and me out on the street as soon as you had the money. It was for us when you said Raffi was just a burden and a tool. I was behind that door, David. I heard everything." He fell silent. He knew there was no escape. "And those £60,000, I continued without giving him a break. "They were also for us? Because you didn't use them for a house or a car. You used them to cover the holes in your crimes and those of your mentor." Enough, Marcus roared. This is a circus. Your marital problems are none of my business. If David stole something, let him deal with it. He tried to disengage himself. It's a shame, one of the auditors intervened, because most of the money ended up in your accounts. All arrows point to you as the mastermind. At that moment, Robert's phone vibrated. He answered it briefly. They're downstairs, he said. Please come up. Marcus looked at him in a panic. Who's downstairs? I looked at him impassively. I forgot to mention that I invited other guests to this little meeting. A few minutes later, the door opened again. 2 uniformed police officers and several plainclothes agents entered. Good morning, one of them spoke. We're from the Economic Crimes Unit. Gentlemen Marcus and David, you need to come with us. There are some questions to answer at the prosecutor's office. Authority changed hands in a second. Marcus, who just minutes ago played the magnate, was now just a suspect. He started shouting, threatening, naming lawyers. The agents gave him the famous speech that he could call whoever he wanted, but at the police station. Meanwhile, David looked like a puppet whose strings had been cut. He did not resist when 2 agents took him by the arm. Suddenly, he reacted, broke free, and knelt before me in the middle of the office. Nadia, please don't do this, he cried, clinging to the hem of my tunic. I'm sorry. I swear I regret it. Think of Raffi. Don't take his father away from him. Give me a chance, I beg you. I looked at him coldly. You're mistaken, David. You're not crying because you regret what you did. You're crying because you got caught. You don't lament betraying me or your son. You lament that your plan has fallen apart. I snatched my clothes from his hands. He collapsed backward. As for Raffi, I continued, he will grow up without a father, yes, but that is 1,000 times better than growing up with a fraudulent, thieving, and cowardly father. That's all I had to tell you. I turned to the police. Please, take them away. The agents led them away amidst shouts, insults, and mutual accusations. Marcus, desperate, ended up shouting at David, blaming him for everything. David, enraged, returned the insults, calling him an old miser. The masks fell. I left the office without looking back. I walked down the wide, silent corridor towards the private elevator. Robert caught up with me. Are you all right, Mrs. Nadia? He asked softly. I entered the elevator and smiled, exhausted but firm. I'm fine, solicitor. When the doors opened in the lobby, the scene was chaotic. Employees, curious clients. Everyone watched as David and Marcus were escorted out, handcuffed. In the midst of all that spectacle, I passed unnoticed like a shadow. While all eyes were on them, I left the building, crossing the glass doors, leaving their shadows behind. The hot, dusty city air hit my face, but for me, it was the freshest air I had ever breathed. I stopped for a moment on the sidewalk, looked at the sky, and took out my phone. I called Mrs. Rose. Hello, Mrs. Rose. Assalamu alaikum. Yes, it's Nadia. I'm done. I'm on my way back. Thank you very much for looking after Raffi. I hung up, ordered a taxi, and waited. I was going home. I was going back to my son. I was going back to a new life. The war was over, and I had won. The days following David and Marcus's arrest were a silent hurricane. The news exploded in all business media. Real estate project scandal, fraud, money laundering, a manager who defrauded his own wife. Their faces appeared everywhere, no longer as successful executives, but as alleged handcuffed criminals. Raffi and I, fortunately, remained out of the spotlight. Robert took care of moving us out of the rented house and took us to a safe aparthotel, away from curious journalists, away from that dwelling that now filled me with disgust. The legal process was tough and long. The first thing I did was file for divorce. I didn't want to be tied to David for another second. From prison, he tried to fight. He got a cheap solicitor who tried to delay everything, claiming that he was a victim of Marcus and that I had set a trap for him. He even had the audacity to claim part of the inheritance as community property. In family court, his solicitor tried hard to paint David as a good husband who deserved to keep a part of our assets. I remained silent and let Robert speak. He didn't argue much. He just played a recording, the one from the night I told him about the inheritance and David's reaction, and the one from the conversation with Marcus, where they planned to leave me on the street. The judge listened, frowning. David's solicitor was speechless. The divorce was granted at that same hearing. Full custody of Rafi remained in my hands with a permanent restraining order. David could not approach or contact us under any circumstances. His name was removed from the legal guardian register. Legally, he ceased to be anyone to us. The criminal process followed its course separately and was much larger. Marcus hired an army of expensive lawyers. They tried to blame David for everything. David, for his part, played the victim. He said he had been pressured, that Marcus had manipulated him, but the evidence was overwhelming. The forensic auditors I had hired showed every movement of the money. The 60,000 pounds had left an impeccable trail. It was the rope with which they had tied themselves. My testimony was the final blow. I told everything from Robert's call to the moment I overheard behind the door. I narrated every lie, every false embrace, every hollow promise. David didn't look at me once. He kept his gaze fixed on the floor. The prosecution asked for the maximum penalty. The list of charges was long: fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, embezzlement. On sentencing day, the courtroom was packed. Marcus, identified as the mastermind, received 20 years in prison and fines that consumed what remained of his fortune. His company declared bankruptcy. His name was destroyed. David, my ex-husband, was sentenced to 15 years in prison. The judge pointed him out as a key player. He not only betrayed the previous company by diverting funds, but also facilitated money laundering and deliberately defrauded me for 15 years. Rafi would be 20 when his father got out. I left the courthouse that day with a feeling of deep relief. It was not relief from revenge, but because justice had been served. An enormous burden had been lifted from my chest. Months passed. Rafi and I began to rebuild our lives. With Robert's help, I learned to manage the inheritance wisely. I didn't buy mansions or sports cars. I bought a comfortable and safe apartment in a good area. I enrolled Rafi in an excellent kindergarten. For the first time, we were not living on the edge. We could breathe. One day, I received a letter from prison. It was from David. He wrote pages and pages. They were filled with apologies, supposed spiritual reflections, promises that he had changed, that he read the Quran every day and understood how wrong he had acted. He begged me to visit him once, just once, to ask for forgiveness face to face. I clutched the letter in my hands, undecided. I read and reread those lines full of repentance. There was something I needed to close. I decided to go. I went alone. I sat in the noisy, sad visiting room, separated by thick glass. David appeared in his blue inmate uniform. He was almost unrecognizable, thinner, his hair shaven, deep dark circles under his eyes. The elegant man who once made me fall in love was gone. He saw me, and his eyes filled with tears. He rushed to take the receiver. "Nadia, thank God you came," he said, his voice broken. I took the receiver calmly, without speaking. "I'm sorry," he sobbed. "I swear I'm sorry. I regret it every day. I pray every night. I was blind, Nadia. Marcus poisoned me. I'll do whatever it takes for you to forgive me." "You say you regret it," I replied in a cold voice, distorted by the intercom. "Yes, I swear." "By God, I regret everything," he insisted. "I didn't come to hear your repentance, David," I said. "I came to tell you one thing. Rafi and I are fine." "Very well, we are happy without you." His face tightened. "I want you to know," I continued, "that every day of these 15 years you're locked up, you'll have time to think about the 8 million pounds you'll never touch, about the comfortable house you'll never live in, and about a son who will never call you Dad. Don't be so cruel, Nadia," he pleaded, completely breaking down. I laughed bitterly. "You taught me how it's done, but don't worry, I won't return the harm in the same way. My true revenge isn't here." I stood up. "My true revenge is my life," I said. "A happy, full, and successful life, built on the ruins of your lies. A life you won't see, and of which you'll never be a part." "Nadia, wait! Don't go!" he shouted, hitting the glass. "Let me see Rafi just once. He's my son." I stopped for a few seconds, my back to him. "You're wrong," I replied. "He's not your son. He's mine, and he'll become a much better man than you, because I'll make sure he doesn't inherit a drop of his father's poison." I hung up the receiver and left, without looking back. His shouts faded behind the metal door. That was the end. I completely closed that chapter. 2 years passed. 2 years can be a very short time, but they can also be enough to build a new world. That morning, the city dawned bright. I, Nadia, stood on a small stage. I no longer wore my old tattered tunics, but sober and neat work clothes, a beige blazer, a white blouse, my headscarf perfectly arranged. In front of me were guests, children, journalists. Behind me, a new 3-story building. It wasn't luxurious, but it was modern and full of color. At the entrance, a playground. Above the main door, it read, Mother's Hope Foundation. I took the microphone. My heart pounded, but not from fear. It was excitement. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah barakatuh, I greeted. My voice, once timid, now sounded firm. Welcome to the inauguration of the Mother's Hope Foundation, a place I built from a dream and many prayers. I paused for a moment. Among the audience, I distinguished Rafi, now 7 years old, sitting in the front row next to Mrs. Rose. He waved to me. I responded with a smile. 2 years ago, I continued, my life changed. I received a huge inheritance that at first I thought was a simple blessing, but that blessing almost destroyed me. I was on the verge of becoming a victim of greed, betrayal, and lies. I was one step away from ending up on the street with my son. The journalists took notes quickly. They knew who I was. They knew my story to a greater or lesser extent. But fate had other plans. I had the strength to fight, and with the help of good people, I won £8 million, I said, without hesitation, a figure that could buy mansions, luxury cars, a life of excess. But what good would all that be if it were only for me? I turned slightly to look at the building. I decided that this money, this inheritance, was not just mine. It was a test, and I decided to use it for something bigger. The Mother's Hope Foundation is dedicated to single mothers, women victims of domestic violence, and orphaned or abandoned children. Women like me, who one day felt alone with nowhere to turn. Here, we not only offer shelter, but also training, legal advice, scholarships for their children, and, above all, hope. Applause flooded the courtyard. I saw Robert standing at the side of the stage with a proud smile. He was no longer just my solicitor. He had become my friend and the president of the foundation's board. The best revenge, I said to conclude, is not to destroy those who harmed us. The best revenge is to build something beautiful with what they tried to use to destroy us. The best revenge is happiness. The ceremony continued with joy. After my speech, I toured the building, greeted donors, hugged the women and children who would be the first beneficiaries. I saw Rafi playing on the swings with other little ones, laughing carefree. He had grown up healthy, cheerful, with no shadows in his eyes. When the event was almost over, Robert approached with 2 glasses of juice. Impeccable speech, Mrs. Nadia. You are officially an executive director, he joked, laughing. Thank you for everything, solicitor. Without you, I wouldn't be here. His expression grew a little more serious. By the way, I have new news. Marcus died last night in prison. A heart attack, he commented. I remained silent for a few seconds. I felt nothing, neither relief, nor triumph, nor sorrow. He was simply someone from the past, completely alien to my present. And David? I asked. He tried to appeal again. His appeal was rejected. He has also sent another letter, the 20th this year. He asks to see a photo of Rafi. He has heard about the foundation from the prison news, he explained. I looked at my son, who was still running around laughing. Leave it there, Robert, I said calmly. Let him hear from afar. Let him see through the bars what I built with the remains of what he tried to destroy. If he wants to repent, let him do so with God, not with me. Robert nodded. He'll rot there, forgotten, regretting every decision, just as you wanted. I nodded, but realized that was no longer what mattered. His repentance was his business. My life went on. Rafi ran to me and hugged my leg. Mama, today I helped plant flowers, he said proudly, his clothes a little stained with dirt. I picked him up and held him close. That was my world. That was my true revenge, a complete, clean happiness. I stood there with Raffi by the hand, looking at the strong foundation building under the sun. I understood that I had not only built an institution, I had rebuilt my own life. I turned an inheritance marked by tragedy into a source of hope. David wanted to take away those £8 million and leave me in misery. In the end, he was the one who lost everything. And I gained something infinitely more valuable than money. I regained myself, and that was the most satisfying ending of all.